Welcome to the Supreme Leader podcast on the 8th of August 2022. Today we're going to talk about food security and the role of the World Economic Forum and its friends. Having looked at the previous articles concerning the agenda of the World Economic Forum, led by Klaus Schwarb and his super rich cronies and corporate friends, you might have begun to get suspicious about their motives, especially given the high praise heaped on the corrupt Netherlands puppet Mark Rutte for his work in crushing private and family-owned farming in the Netherlands. We hope that the Supreme Leader started you questioning just what the corrupt super rich have in store for you. Well, here's a bit of an indication. Guess who is now one of the largest owners of farmland in the United States? The world's fourth richest man and close ally of the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates, formerly of Microsoft. To be fair, he is slightly behind his fellow billionaire Bill Malone, technically behind, as the other wild Bill owns 2.2 million acres of farm and forest land, so it's not quite the same. Ironically, according to Fox, the healthy eating advocate Bill Gates, who would have us all eating cockroach protein in the long term, is providing a large percentage of potatoes to McDonald's for fries. Seems ironic for a big talker when it comes to world health, doesn't it? Though some of his ideas are deeply alarming to any normal person, and you can only be doubtful that he's good for your health. But they're all at it. Jeff Bezos, for once, is playing catch-up at 25th in terms of farmland ownership, as he only owns about 420,000 acres of farmland at the moment. But as he learns just how much more he can exploit people, I'm sure he'll step it up. After all, perhaps he can make Amazon warehouse employees work for rations in future. So underperforming staff, such as perhaps pregnant women, as we've seen in the press, will have their rations cut and some sort of perverse performance-related pay. So many new ways to enslave the population, it must be almost irresistible to them. This is, after all, the man that speaks about people, ordinary people, destroying the earth, when from a Western corporate perspective, Amazon are doing an enormous amount of the damage, all while flying around in his private jet to lecture the rest of us on climate change. The sheer amount of power his data centers alone use is a huge carbon footprint, but I do not see him trying to solve the single largest carbon problem, which is power production, and not what you or I might do. Beware billionaires talking about climate change. It's almost always a smokescreen for something a bit more insidious. Though to be fair, he has given a little bung to at least one fusion-related energy project, which may, hopefully, develop a fusion-related power production solution in the next 20, 30 years. Could it be a little diversion from the immense harm being done by them today, perhaps? With the possible exception of Elon Musk and a small other less-known names, they're all at it. As a result of this attack on food security by a handful of the super rich, food prices will go up as more and more production is controlled by this corrupt cabal. We can expect that they will all be working together, as many of the corporations in food production today do. The market has become smaller and smaller and smaller. They will be able to achieve further price fixing and market control in a full cartel fashion, as some of the Brazilian meat producers do today. The average private farmer in the United States farms about 444 acres. The typical farming family makes about $69,000 a year in profit from that, usually from stressful and backbreaking work. They've been struggling with regulation and sale prices for their goods controlled by some of the world's largest corporations for a decade or more now. For the super rich, it is so easy to achieve total unfettered control. You get your mates in Congress, which you probably put there in the first place, to pass one more regulation to break these vulnerable farmers, making it impossible for them to profit at all. Or you have your mates in the WEF, who are in one of the few supersized corporations which purchase the majority of food globally, squeeze them just a little, pushing them over the edge into bankruptcy. Then you swoop in and take the now unprofitable land for a song. Or even easier, use one of your puppet politicians like Mark Rutte in the Netherlands to pass harmful regulation which costs nothing but their reputation and the public. Trust in politicians being at an all-time low anyway, where's the harm? Particularly as the compliant politician then gets compensated with new roles and opportunities, and few, if any, globalist leaders have ever been poorer after their so-called public service. But things have been on a sharp decline and building up to this for a decade. That side of the industry already experienced the disastrous effects of globalization already. Many farms were already forced into difficulty because of the consolidation of power on the buy side of the food chain, with more and more production and distribution consolidated under a few mega corporations, allowing them to set the buyer price for all farmers. Farmers working to produce quality product in a healthy environment just simply found it impossible to make a profit. This resulted in a situation where many farms were already taken over by corporations, leading to farms upon which the farmers are now just tenant farmers, harkening back to the old days in Britain when the serfs did not own the land they worked. We evolved past this as a society about 1,000 years ago, and yet the World Economic Forum seemed to have exactly this in mind. Apparently, the peasant revolt was truly revolting to the globalists, and they're doing all they can to put ordinary people back in their place. Yes, this is all about unwinding 1,000 years of progress and returning us all to serfdom under the guise of climate change. It is all about disenfranchising a Western public that gets in the way of the ambitions of the World Economic Forum and others who pull the levers of organizations such as the European Union and individual nations. It's about trying to force us all into a post-democratic world in which you have no say in anything that affects you. These people feel that because of their enormous success and wealth, their opinion is simply worth more, that they are worth more than you. Control the food, control the land, own the people. Track them and trace them, the continuous mantra of the Great Reset's creator, Klaus Schwarb, and this entire cabal. What else is there left to buy when you can buy anything and everything except everyone else? For the super rich that can afford to buy huge swathes of the total available arable farmland, they can gain reasonable pricing from the vendors, which control 90% of the world's viable seeds, and on the other side, the buy price. They can also control society and indeed the world. Is a fantastic investment for them, but one of the most destructive things to happen in generations. It will destroy the future for generations without number as we go back to serfdom and totally destroy democracy. With a thin veneer of democracy, as it already is, you can lose your job if you seem to have the wrong opinions today. But in the future, could you lose access to food? Perhaps we will see another dystopian novel become a reality. We passed so many of the dire predictions of Orwell's 1984 a long time ago. Will it be the Hunger Games next? But in the nearer term, we will all get less choice, less palatable food on our plates, be forced to eat cockroach paste and lab-made food, while the wealthy get to eat healthy diets supporting their ambitions at greater longevity. But the super rich investing in longevity treatments will be for another article. The Great Reset is well underway and you better wake up. Join in with the spirit of the French Yellow Vests, the Canadian truckers with new movements, new organisations, and fight back while you have any chance at all. They can only get away with it if you let them, and if you vote with the status quo and work with them, allowing this sort of thing to continue. You delude yourself that climate change is really what they're about. Climate change is a worthwhile topic, and it's something to look at, and it's probably real, and it's certainly worth. The world is something we need to protect, but that's not what they're doing. They can only get away with it if you let them, and they are getting away with it. Just look at voters in France at their last election. They again voted for one of the most powerful globalists' favourite puppets, President Macron. Literally the banker to one of the most powerful globalist organisations to ever exist, and very much under the control of the WEF. Perhaps it will be the French farmers targeted next. Though I suspect it's quite naive to think that this isn't already happening. Is just a different approach in France than in the Netherlands, using the more gradual introduction of legislation and other means to destroy French farmers in a death by 1,000 cuts. It takes great control of media, messaging, and the destruction of the reputation of others to achieve the election of someone that performs so badly, is so unpopular, and has done so much harm to his country. When you control the media and what people hear, it's not so difficult to tell people that they are doing fine, even though their lives are getting slowly worse and will continue to do so, even as the gap between the super rich and everyone else is higher than ever in history. Today, just 9 people currently control more wealth than 6.9 billion people put together. There have never been larger and more all-encompassing monopolies controlling vital sectors such as food production, power, social media, and almost all vital services. This is not a free market or true capitalism. The levers of power are so co-opted by these monopolies to the point where there is no honest competition. Indeed, in many cases, corporations work hand in glove with their puppets in organisations such as the European Union, which is basically an extension of the WEF itself at this point, to pass laws which make competition more difficult, if not impossible. This is robber barons 2.0, and it's totally unchecked by any control. They've simply become so powerful that they control the governments and regulation no longer really truly exists. In the past, governments would act to break up monopolies. Despite the fact that we have the largest monopolies in existence in the world today, there is no action being taken to do anything about it, and it may well be too late now, as even governments seem to be bought and sold by them. When your message is the only voice people can hear because you control social media and can label honest actors as conspiracy theorists and have them removed from all media, you can keep slandering every opponent and block or twist their messages, all the while broadcasting your lies so often that people start to believe it. A corporation or entity, such as the WEF, become the kingmakers in a world like this, with the complicity and support of organizations such as Facebook, Google, and state-funded media. Something now well publicized thanks to various Senate hearings due to the brave actions of various whistleblowers and a few investigative journalists. But sadly, such voices are far too few, and one only has to look at the output of the Senate hearings to see how deeply the vested interests go. When you basically have leaders of these companies laughing in the face of senators, it tells you all you need to know about how bad things really are. Where is the output of those meetings? What has changed? Nothing, and nor can it. It is hardly surprising that globalist organizations can quite easily get their favorite puppet into a political system which is now so deeply compromised that the only solution we have is that we need a great reset. But not the kind of great reset that they have in mind, that's for sure, but a total rethinking of the way we deal with power, decentralize it, and give control back to the people. It gets easier and easier for them to get anyone they want elected, and thereby greater and greater political control in a system like this. It's like rolling a snowball down a hill. It just gains power exponentially over time. Beware any politician that uses comments like vote for change. Nothing should scream liar to you louder than that. If they represented change, you would be easily able to see the difference, wouldn't you? They wouldn't need to lie about it or spell it out. It would be, well, different enough to get your attention. Fight back and do not believe the lies put out by these people, which you see repeated by their mouthpieces on mainstream media night after night. They're just trying to repeat the lie often enough that you just believe it. Thank you for listening to the Supreme Leader podcast. Hope to see you again soon.